Hey there, how's it going? Richard Kiston here, an attorney helping people in the New York City area with things like bankruptcy and real estate. I want to hop on here real quick and give a rundown of what exactly are closing costs when you're buying a home in the New York City area. It's 2025, and sure, interest rates are elevated. You've got all this tariff talk. So there's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines, but that means it's a great opportunity to get prepared so that when you're ready to purchase a house, you know exactly what you're getting into. And a lot of the time that I spend when I'm dealing with first-time home buyers especially, it's educating them on what exactly they're looking at. There's a lot of things that occur in a real estate transaction, a lot of documents and numbers being passed around. And if you're not in this each and every day, it's hard to parse and it's hard to really understand. So I wanted to give this rundown of what closing costs are when you're buying a home, a house in the New York City area, so that, again, you're just better prepared when you're ready to pull the trigger on purchasing a house. One of the challenging things is that with respect to the term closing costs, you'll often get different answers from different people, depending on who you ask in the transaction. So again, I just want to run through how I look at it, what closing costs are to me, and then you have a better sense of what the totality of purchase looks like. So let's just hop right onto it. I've got a screen set up here with running through what the different expenses when you're purchasing a home in New York City. I'm going to set aside things like home inspection. What else might there be? Termite inspection. All that would probably go before you submit or get into contract, right? If you're going to submit an offer and maybe that's contingent on appraisal or on a home inspection, you're doing that inspection before you get into contract, right? The last thing you want to do is enter a contract and then not know, oh my gosh, like there was thousands of dollars in damages that need to be corrected. So inspection is going to be before you enter contract. Termite inspection, the seller may already have that, but that usually is part of the contract. So I'm gonna jump to, you're already in contract and you're working with your mortgage broker or your loan officer with respect to your mortgage. So in terms of getting a sense, because you're going to get two big documents in the transaction. One on the front end is going to be the loan estimate. And then the last document right before you get to closing is going to be the closing disclosure. These two documents are standardized documents that are supposed to be used by like banks so that it makes it very simple for the consumer, you who's buying the property, to know exactly what dollar for dollar, cent for cent was involved in transaction. The reality is it's a little different because a lot of the costs don't make it on, let's for instance, a closing disclosure. Sometimes when you're rushing to get a closing together on the loan estimate side, like different lenders have different tolerances of what those numbers could look like. So there's going to be a lot of disparity when you compare loan estimates from different mortgage brokers and loan officers, as well as the closing disclosure. But let's hop into it and try to make this as clear as possible. So once you have a contract and you're getting to closing, what are going to be my closing costs? Or even from the beginning, like once you're dealing with a mortgage broker or loan officer, you're contemplating your budget, like what exactly am I going to have to bring to the table? What do I have to have in my bank account to know that I can purchase this home? So the first thing, right, we have the purchase price, whatever that may be. And let's say, for example, it's going to be, we're talking about the New York City area. So let's say $800,000, right? From that, even before we get to like substantial closing costs, right? You're going to have adjustments when you're getting to closing. And once there's a closing date, there's going to be things like real estate taxes, water and sewer adjustments. If there are tenants on the property, rent and deposits, there may be adjustments for, I don't know, repair, whatever it is. But adjustments, you're going to hear that between the attorneys. And that's what that is going to be. Usually going to be, again, taxes, water, sewer, security deposit, rent, any credits for like, I don't know, violations, or if there's a seller concession involved. That's all adjustments. Once you take the purchase price minus the adjustments, your down payment on the contract, you're going to have the first figure, which is part of closing costs, the amount that's due to the seller at the closing. And that's going to be often the largest amount, right? Whatever you got to pay the seller at the closing after these adjustments by in between you and the seller. So that's closing cost piece of the pie number one. It's going to be the amount due to the seller at closing. Then we get into bank fees. When you're applying for a mortgage, let's say the mortgage amount is $600,000 on our $800,000 purchase. You're not getting $600,000 at closing. The bank is taking their fees, all of their costs from that loan. They're not relying on you bringing it to closing and then get reimbursed. They're taking that from their own money right off the top. So you've got to bring that difference to the closing, and that becomes closing cost piece number two. So some of these bank fees are going to be the mortgage broker, the loan officer, their commission, it's going to be right at the top of the second page of the closing disclosure. That's going to be there. If you're paying any points down to reduce like your interest rate, that should be on the closing disclosure as well. Any escrowed amount. So for instance, if your mortgage payment is going to pay the taxes and insurance as well, the bank is going to take a certain amount, probably like approaching 4 to 6 months, so that they have a reserve, and that's going to be taken from the loan amount. And bank attorney fee, right? The bank has its own attorney representing them at a closing, and their fee gets paid from the mortgage, the loan amount. So there are a handful of other costs, but these are going to be the big ticket items, right? It's going to be like the commission on it, points if you're paying anything, escrow amounts, bank attorney fee. That's closing costs part number 2. Next, we're going to have title charges. To understand where the title charges come in, you have to understand what title insurance is. And title insurance, what I like to explain is, think about it as once you're in the property, you own the property, it's insurance that protects your ownership of the deed. So if one day if somebody knocks on the door and says that they own the property, that's where title insurance kicks in. Now, the lender, generally speaking, wants title insurance. There's going to be, when we talk about title insurance in a residential mortgage transaction, there's going to be 2 different policies. There's an owner title policy, which protects you as the purchaser and your interest in the deed. And then there's going to be a lender policy, which protects the bank, right? They want to make sure that when their mortgage gets filed with the deed, that there's nothing ahead of it. They want to be number 1 in terms of priority in case like there's ever a default and they have to foreclose on the property. So that's where title insurance comes in. And there's going to be, generally speaking, when there's a mortgage, 2 policies. One ensuring an owner title policy for you again, and then there's going to be the lender insurance policy. Those prices are set by the state. There's also generally going to be additional riders that the lender wants as part of their policy. Those prices are set by the state as well. The other big ticket item on your title bill is going to be the mortgage tax. When you're getting a mortgage, there's state tax, city tax. It ends up being about, again, depending on exactly what county you're in, like Nassau, Suffolk, and then also the amount, whether it's below $500,000 or $500,000 and above. But it's let's just call it like a little over 2% of the mortgage amount is what you're paying in mortgage tax. So that's a big chunk at the closing table, and that falls, it's part of the title bill. The recording of the deed. So for instance, in New York City, it's going to be a few $100. If you're recording out in Nassau and Suffolk, it's about $1,300, I want to say, something like that, to record a deed. And then finally, the last thing is cost for searches. In the transaction, you're going to hear title report, title bill, title insurance. What it is that there are companies out there, title abstract companies, that many attorneys, myself included, they do that work each and every day. They look for lawsuits, liens, violations, things that may impact the seller, the buyer, or the property. So that, because every party wants to make sure that they're getting free and clean title, so that they have to do these searches in the county records office, looking for, again, lawsuits, liens, violations, tax liens, anything that may impact seller, buyer, or the property that needs to be cleared before closing. So each title company charges for those searches and whatever that is. So when you add, generally speaking, those 4 things up, that's what's going to be your title charges, which is the 3rd piece of your closing costs. Moving on, we got the final couple items is going to be paying people like me, the buyer attorney fee, right? So, we get involved in the contract, reviewing the title, dealing with any things that may come up with title or during the transaction. So that's what the buyer attorney fee is all about. And then finally, both sides of the closing will pay. There's someone from the title company or contracted by the title company to the closing. And their job is really to make sure, like, if there's checks to pay off a mortgage, that they confirm the amount, that the checks line up. They're the ones responsible for mailing out the checks to pay off the seller's mortgage. So both sides pay the title closer at the closing. So that's going to be actually the 4th and 5th pieces of your closing costs if you're buying a home in New York City. And then finally, just a little caveat, if you're getting into a condo or a co-op, there might be additional fees. You'll generally get these from, if there's a closing agent with the building, before you can schedule a closing, they'll send you a list of fees. This often includes like move in, move out deposits, paying the building attorney fee as well. If there's any like document processing fee, all that has to be paid at closing as well. So depending on what kind of property you're purchasing, where exactly the property is located, the numbers are going to differ, but generally it's going to be these 5 to 6 different big ticket items. And just to review, number 1 is going to be the amount due seller. Number 2 are going to be your bank fees. Number 3 are your title charges. Number 4, your buyer attorney fee. 5 is going to be your title closer fee. And then if applicable, 6 is going to be if you're getting condo co-op, whatever fees may be assessed to get to closing. And there you have it. So if you're contemplating buying property, buying a house in the New York City area, those are the fees. When people talk about closing costs, average out whatever it is, I think 10% for closing costs. That's what you're looking at as a buyer. Hopefully you found this helpful. If so, give it a like, subscribe, drop any comments below if you have any questions about maybe breaking these things out a little more. And until next time, take care, be well, bye for now.